What's going on, everybody? We are live on a Tuesday night, and this is the third episode of In Defense of the Genre. In our very first episode, Dr. Will Dodson beat down this gentleman, Mr. Jeremy Long. They talked about best TV comedies. And in the second episode, Dr. Dodson came back and narrowly defeated Laurent Ohmansiek from Wicked Vision in Germany, and they spoke on 80s action. Tonight, I had somebody that wanted to take on the champ literally like the minute the episode was done. In let's see, the last episode was in April, forever ago, and that person decided on our topic tonight with a little bit of a twist for me. But before we get into the topic, let's bring on our contestants. First up, the defending champion, the defending two-time champion from North Carolina, Dr. Will Dodson. Dr. Dodson, how are we doing?
Heineken, fuck that shit.
How are we?
Pabst Blue Ribbon. I'm doing okay. A little harried, a little haggard, a little worn for wear, which should give Steven a fighting chance.
Well, since we've name dropped him, the contestant that is coming in to challenge the throne that Will has been holding since early March at this point, from Chasing Labels and the Shelf Shock Rewind Awards, Mr. Stephen Billings. Thank you, Stephen.
Anybody need a dick demon tonight?
Because if so, Will can supply his own dick demon.
Oh, well, good. How's everybody doing? What's up, guys?
That's actually my wife's pet name for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, we've got a whole bunch of people in the chat to witness the SmackDown. Anthony's here. What's going on, Anthony? Christian's hobby blog. I can bet he's betting on Will tonight. Griff is here. Hello, Griff. Magic Hands. Will, you have anything you want to say about this guy?
Oh man, where do I begin?
Okay. Anthony is saying hello. Stefano, what's going on, my friend? Hey, Will is in the chat as well. Interesting. Distorted Visions, what's going on, my friend? And Video Store Review, hello. Jeremy says you're already drinking the piss. Stan Geezy, hello, my friend. I hope you're having a great time on your vacation. Jeremy, it's the infamous dick demon that CD Trader asked me to ask Ryan about once upon a time. That was a fun day. Ryan, dude, you like movies too? Good, I'm glad. Wave, hello, my friend. So, like I said, the last episode got done, and Steven texted me pretty much immediately and said, I need to take down the champ.
I'm your guy. Look, I mean, I'm excited to do this. I'm not. I would say there was a time where I was a lot better at arguing points. I've gotten a lot older. I've gotten foggier up here. That's what happens when you get married.
And have kids too.
And you have kids, so you lose some of that like bandwidth that I used to have. But I'm going to do my best tonight to try to knock him off the throne. I feel like I'm playing. What's that game show where they have that one guy and you're trying to answer the questions and beat him out and knock him off the. There's a show. You know me. Can't know. I just told you I'm foggy. There's a game show. Huh? I think The Chase. That's it. Your
podcast name is Chasing Labels.
I know. I couldn't
can't think of The Chase.
This is what we're heading into tonight, guys.
Well, this is going great so far.
I know, right? Yeah. But if there's anybody that's going to support me tonight, it's ET. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of ET,
demons.
when Steven messaged me and said, I'm going to take down the champ, he brought along the idea and said, let's take on the oeuvre of Steven Spielberg. Why Spielberg, Steven?
Well, I think, even me and a lot of us, we all grew up with a lot of his films. And I knew Will would probably be very educated in that too, to make it even. I didn't want to just trying to find something I thought he might not know. But, being that he's a doctor, there probably isn't as much that I could get past him anyway. So I'm going to go with something that I feel pretty confident in. And that's Steven Spielberg. Like I said, grew up with watching about every one of them. And then we started talking more about it. And you were like, wait a second.
Well, hold on. Before we break into that, Will, tell me what you feel about Mr. Steven Spielberg.
Well, I want to point out that I haven't gotten to choose any topics ever.
They have all been okayed by you, at least.
Oh, holy God. Well, what is your question? Because I was going to talk about ancient Greeks.
How do you feel about Steven Spielberg?
Oh, I don't care for him.
Wow.
I don't care for him. I like that movie that he didn't actually direct. Jaws.
Ah, yes.
That one's pretty good. There's somebody whose producer actually did direct their movie for them, but he got all the credit. No, I don't care for Spielberg. I think, he's a populist.
No Jess Franco. No Jess Franco.
Jess Franco is definitely not a populist.
Not even a little bit. Will is very anti-Steven Spielberg, which means I knew that if we chose Spielberg, it would be a little unfair, perhaps, but also
I would have sent a Native American in my place to decline to participate.
All right, Brando.
It would have been really awkward. And I think one of the best things that we could do, because it covers a whole lot of genres, is if we talk about the producerial work of Mr. Steven Spielberg. So this is going to cover a lot of different stuff because he's done so much. Like he's shown a light around certain people that got their major start because he produced their films. Zemeckis is probably the biggest example of that, but he has done that for a handful of people. He's also done a lot of the same thing for actors themselves. So I think this is a really great opportunity to discuss this. And on that note, I do want to make one rule. That is, we are not going to talk about that one specific film that he produced that everybody says he directed until I tell you to. Okay? Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a running thing all night that gets leaned on. So what we're going to do is lean on the conflict between Steven and Will here. And we are going to, of course, make this chaotic because I had to change the rules again. The first two episodes were great, but they were a little clunky. And I think I've got a perfect setup now. And the way that we did this, so everybody can figure this out at home, is I asked both gentlemen for a list of 12 ranked producer efforts that they could give me from the list of films that Steven Spielberg has produced. And I took those, sprinkled in a little bit of alchemy, sprinkled in a little mayhem, and I made what we are going to do tonight with 10 different full-blown debate rounds that are going to be divided into 4 rounds. The first round will have 4 topics. Second round will have 3, third 2, and then a final topic. You, as the audience, will be voting after every round tonight. So you will vote 4 times over who you think is doing better at that point. And I would like to provide the list that the gentleman gave me. And Will, of course, in classic Will fashion, as we were gearing up to start this, realized that he had 2 mistakes on his list, and he needed to change them out.
Hold on a second. They weren't mistakes because you did not specify to me that uncredited work didn't count.
Well, I mean, that should be fairly obvious.
Well, clearly it was not.
Clearly. Yeah, if somebody's uncredited, we can't say that they did the work.
Well, IMDb says they did. And IMDb is unerring.
So let's talk about Shrek, people. Let's talk about Shrek.
So Steven's list is going to have 12. Will's list is going to have 11. But we are not going to be discussing all of these films tonight. I just want to set this up so you can hear the tastes of your fellow opponent and get ready to discuss this. So tonight, Will's ranked list is as follows. Poltergeist in the number 1 spot. Gremlins 2, The New Batch. The omitted number 4 option was 3 O'Clock High. Number 5, The Goonies. 6, The Money Pit. 7, Small Soldiers. 8, Akira Kurosawa's Dreams. 9, Joe versus the Volcano. 10, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. 11, Inner Space. 12, Young Sherlock Holmes.
Good
Steven,
list.
how do you feel about that list?
Yeah, even some of them unaccredited. I mean, like Small Soldiers was one I wanted to talk about, but yeah, I get it. But it's definitely some of his not as much epic list. I would say it's the smaller, quirkier stuff. That's and it's fine. I mean, it's good. It's a solid list. I mean, I could
He's
have picked.
uncredited. He's uncredited on Small Soldiers too.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Well, you know what? I don't take any of them back because it just goes to show you my favorite stuff that Spielberg did doesn't even have his name on it.
It does prove a point here.
Let's go into Steven's list then. Will, this is going to be for you to react to. Steven's list: number 1, Men in Black. Number 2, Poltergeist. Number 3, Back to the Future 3. Number 4, An American Tale. Number 5, Twister. 6, Real Steel. 7, Arachnophobia. 8, Land Before Time. 9, Casper. 10, Deep Impact. 11, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And 12, The Flintstones. How do you feel about that list, Will?
Well, I can definitely tell about how old Steven is because he's just the right age where a lot of those movies would have seemed good.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because
go ahead.
So we go from the movie about the guy trying to sleep with his mom to the movie about the guy who pantomime fights with robots in order to reconnect with his wife.
Okay.
Yeah. Back to the Future 3 doesn't really lean heavily on that story.
It's lore. Like once a guy tries to sleep with his mom, you don't just shake that off.
I mean, maybe
Well,
he did.
we're talking. Your list. We're talking about the possession movie that goes into the Little Critters movie. That goes into the Little Critters movie. It's very similar stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not gonna have to think too hard about them two movies.
Yeah. And the guy who makes out with his older brother's girlfriend
Hey, sounds spicy to me. Let's talk about it.
Well, I'm a flibberty gibbet.
Jerry.
Oh, rest in peace, man. I love Jerry Springer.
Yeah, no, I love Jerry Springer. Yeah.
He was a reflecting pool of culture.
All right. So we've got 2 strong lists here, and I will admit that I'm a fan of like a mix of these 2 lists. And there are quite a few from each list that I like. There's a couple on each list that I really don't care for all that much. So I'm very curious how we are going to really defend these. So what we're going to do first, we are going to start with round 1. And round 1 is going to have 4 different genre debates. What you are going to do is you're going to have a film that is from your list, or maybe not from your list, that is assigned to you to discuss against your opponent, and you are going to tell me why it is a better representative of that genre than your opponent's film.
Okay, so I still might be getting one of Steven's films and have to defend it.
I am going to tell you now, I am not giving you any of your opponent's picks tonight, unless they were on both lists. So, as the challenger, Steven, you are going to go first in this round. Okay. You are going to be defending the Flintstones against Young Sherlock Holmes as the better young adult films.
Okay. So when do I start?
Now.
All right. So the Flintstones, we know this is a popular kids, film, cartoon from the 60s. And with the film, it was a big deal. And when after the first movie came out, big success, made tons of money. You got John Goodman, you got Rick Moranis. These are people that people knew from Roseanne. Rick Moranis was in Ghostbusters. People really loved this. And to see something like this that they saw every time they get up in the morning as kids, to see now on the big screen and with Rick Baker's effects, not Rick Baker, I'm sorry, the Jim Henson Company's puppet effects with the updated CGI that Jurassic Park had brought to the scene. I think you really brought to life that cartoon. and it really was all inspiring for kids. And I think in the genre, as something as a family film, I think was really good. And obviously by the take in for box office, it was a big success for kids. And, you know, yeah, I just think that the casting was great. The humor was clunky, but that is the show. You know, it's kids humor. It's not going to be, you know, Kyle MacLachlan as the villain was perfect. Halle Berry as his assistant. It really works for kids on this really campy level. And I think it's really good for the family.
This is one I think is a little underrated. I think that this should be a lot higher on people's lists. I will point out that this is as far as I'm aware, the only film that Spielberg is a producer under a different name, and that's Steven Spielrock.
Yeah.
I really wish the sequel would have been better to this, and we would have kept this going a little longer or had some sort of spin-offs. I was a huge fan of the casting in the first one. I think, again, Kyle MacLachlan is the best thing possibly, other than the obvious John Goodman casting that made that first one amazing.
Yeah.
Will, how do you feel about the Flintstones?
You know, it made a lot of money. So
Yabba dabba do.
yeah. You know, the thing about the Hanna-Barbera cartoons is that they are generally kind of aimed at the lowest common denominator, and I think that was really true for the film.
All right. Well, why don't we start in then on Young Sherlock Holmes?
Well, you know, here's a film that's also aimed at a younger audience. Older young children and maybe preteens, and it was made during the days where PG/PG-13 really meant something. A time in your life when you're just starting to kind of awaken to sexuality, to independence, to the idea of like learning and getting excited about knowing stuff that other people don't know, going on adventures. This is back before trampolines had little guards around them to keep kids from doing something stupid. This is back when consequences were real, and playground equipment was made out of metal. And that's exactly the right cultural moment for a film like Young Sherlock Holmes, which, you know, again, aimed at a younger audience, but includes like harrowing sequences where people are, you know, actually killed, and characters have to deal with the emotional fallout of that. The titular character, Young Sherlock Holmes, has to recognize his own fallibility. He gets humbled. He has to learn a degree of humility. The young Watson has to kind of develop his own self-confidence, and there's a lady in it too, who I don't really remember, because during, like, at that point in my age, like, I was starting to awaken to sex and sexuality, but I was really much more interested in the relationship between the male characters, and because they were going through what I was going through. Excellent stinger reveal at the end of the film, which I won't spoil for anyone who hasn't seen it. Some very early CGI work that, you know, looks like it was early, but actually is quite well deployed in the film, I think. I think this is one of the better films that Chris Columbus wrote, directed by Barry Levinson during his like solid like diner era days. Very atmospheric, you know, set at a British boarding school. Oh, Stan, you know, I'm just saying that. I'm up here doing sophistry, but Young Sherlock Holmes is a film that I think would translate well to younger generations today as well.
I know that there are a lot of naysayers against young Sherlock Holmes. I think that I watched it at the perfect time to make it fit for me, but I could see that if it was a couple years earlier or later, it might not have worked for me. Steven, what do you think of Young Sherlock Holmes?
It's it's not quite what I would say is for everybody. It's definitely and even just the Sherlock Holmes character cannot always be translated well for a younger generation. But they're trying to do that more now with like Enola Holmes and stuff. Yeah, it's okay. It's not one of my favorite adaptations of that character. I understand the idea of wanting to do, I think it's good, especially Chris Columbus is known for this, writing scripts that are family films, but they're also talking about adult themes. He does that a lot. And Mrs. Doubtfire is a better version of that, I think, is a better movie that deals with that subject matter, personally. But,
Wow.
All right. So, young Sherlock Holmes versus the Flintstones. Keep those arguments in mind as we go on to the second genre discussion of tonight.
Hold on a second. Can you give an example of a Sherlock Holmes adaptation that you like better?
I probably like the British TV show with Martin Freeman and
Sherlock
Cumberbatch. Sherlock. Sherlock. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So recency bias.
Or recent. No, it's just, I don't honestly. I probably haven't seen all of them.
It's also not very recent.
It's probably in the last 10 years, but yeah, I mean, it's probably one of my favorites. I've seen some of the Christopher Lee one, which it was fine. But it's not exactly my forte. So I can't talk about all of them, but
so
I do like the show.
No Jeremy Bentham, no Basil Rathbone, none of that stuff.
I couldn't talk about them. No. So
I'm sorry.
That's not an argument to make. Let's go to the second round. The second genre that we're going to discuss tonight, we need to bring a little bit of love to the show. So we're going to be talking about some romance. Will, you are going to be arguing yours first, which is going to be Joe versus the Volcano. Steven, you are going to defend I Want to Hold Your Hand. Will, go right ahead.
Joe versus the Volcano is a film that I hated the first several times I saw it, and yet I kept going back to it. And I kept going back to it for two reasons. One, the opening sequence where Tom Hanks goes to work to the tune of a cover of 16 Tons is one of the first times as a kid that I really looked at a film and thought, this was made to look a certain kind of way, like, wow. And I can go back to that sequence even now and be so impressed with it. The other moment is when Meg Ryan refers to herself accurately in the context of the film as a flibberty gibbet, which immediately became one of my favorite words and remains so to this day. The film is absolutely goofy, and again, one that's aimed at both children and adults, right? You've got this guy who's diagnosed with a terminal brain disease, and so he contracts to throw himself into a volcano as a human sacrifice. What a great concept! What a great elevator pitch! And not all of the movie works, but there's something so utterly charming about the performances of Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in the film, and the various locations, going from the dull, metallic factory where Tom Hanks works to the middle of the ocean and then to the island of the volcano. The color palette gets brighter and more both jubilant and violent as time goes on, which mirrors the development of the romance. It's a movie that, and the reason I don't think I liked it at first is because I wasn't ready yet intellectually for it. And as I grew, I began to understand what a good film it was, and what a real authorial statement John Patrick Shanley was making as the writer director.
All right, so for Will, with Joe versus the Volcano, I like it. It's a pretty good one. It's not one of my favorites, but I understand the pick here. Steven, how do you feel about Joe versus the Volcano?
I think I'm a little bit with you. Like, it's an okay film. The idea of somebody being, having some kind of terminal disease, and then going off to have their kind of journey is something that's been played before. Kiru is one. I know you're going to talk about Kurosawa probably later. Kiru is one. Even Walter Mitty, if you remember the Walter Mitty movie, that's one more of a crisis of midlife crisis type of movie. But that's essentially kind of the same thing in a way. The need to go out and live your life since it might end soon. And so, and we saw Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks together in multiple movies going forward, and they have good chemistry, but you have to be in with that humor, I think, to really like the movie. And it's all right. It's all right.
All right, Steven, how about we defend? I want to hold your hand.
Well, I don't think it's very hard to, you can't really fight with the idea that everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but most people of that time love the Beatles. And in this story of I Want to Hold My Hand, I Want to Hold Your Hand, these group of girls want to go to this hotel where the Beatles are staying, and they all do all that they can to get there to try to meet the Beatles. And you might want to call it lust, but I think it's love, because the music that they bring, because all you need is love. And throughout the story, you see the lengths that they will go to see this band because they love them so much. Whether it be the girl who, does the typical sneak into the food cart and sneak into the hotel room, or whether it's just trying to sneak by security guards at the hotel, or also this movie I don't know if anybody's seen this film, but if anybody saw Detroit Rock City, that came way later, it's very much plays in that same vein of a group of in this case a group of young girls that will go to whatever lengths to see the people that they want to see. And I think that because this is based in reality, and we know the history of the Beatles, and we know the history of what the craze was, especially when it came to the Ed Sullivan Show, where the Beatles came for the first time to America and played. The craze around that is real. And so in this case, the real love is true love. We know this is real, and in Joe versus the Volcano, that's a fictional story. It's made up. It's not like this where we know this happened. And now this is maybe a fictional story around these characters, but the real craze is real and the real love is there. And I think that, this is Robert Zemeckis' first film, and of course team up with Spielberg. And I think that the work he does in this film to show the love that these group of girls have for the Beatles is like super real. And I just think it's honestly, it's a really just, I think a great first time classic from a director. So
I would agree. I think this is an underrated first film from Zemeckis. I'm glad that he put it out. I'm glad that Spielberg saw the talent and decided to back it. Will, how do you feel about I Want to Hold Your Hand?
I get all that, but I'm troubled by its version of history. And I'll reference another film that handles a similar story of two people who come together around the birth of the British invasion, the birth of white people rock and roll, by way of illustrating my point. And that's Josh Becker's If I Had a Hammer from 1999, which is a film about the moment in our cultural history where folk music as a space for activism and social change was completely subsumed by the hedonism of rock and roll. Now, rock and roll up until this point had been kind of segregated, right? Because it's a black art form arising out of the blues, and it had only just started to kind of be monetized for white audiences, watered down with bands like Bill Haley and the Comets. So this film, If I Had a Hammer, is set on the night that Elvis appears on the Ed Sullivan Show. And so this young folk singer, young woman folk singer who's idealistic and wants to, create change, and this doofus who just wants to get a girl, and and so on. He becomes a rock and roll star. The folk singers get swept away, and she leaves in a huff, kind of realizing that he was never anything of substance. He was just kind of pretending. And that's kind of how I feel about the emotional content in I Want to Hold Your Hand. I feel like it's very surface level. No denying that Zemeckis is a talented filmmaker. I've got a film or two of his on my list, but yeah, that kind of nostalgic rendition of history kind of rubs me the wrong way, because it's just not very true.
Well, I mean, we could look at the characters too. If you just want to focus on the characters, there's a character that, she's deciding she wants to get married, but then, sees this moment to go to see the Beatles and chooses her own inner passions over something that maybe she was just getting drug into, because at that time, getting married was, the thing to do, and, the rest of her friends were off going after their things. The one girl wants to be a news reporter. She wants to get pictures of the Beatles. She's the one that drives the story to that point in the first place. So then you got the girl that is being made to get married, but now she decides that instead of that, she just wants to follow her passions. I think that that's a good thing. You might not like all the things around it as being maybe completely true, but I think we know that typically when things are crazy, they're typically true. We think that history is a lot more, real life is a lot more weird and crazy. So sure, it might be played up a little bit, but that's movies. And I think that there's a lot more there with the characters that makes this a real good love story. So
you're probably right. I've never seen it.
I never saw Young Sherlock Holmes. So.
Oh, you guys are amazing. All right. So that was our second entry in our first round. We're going to move on to our third. This one, we are going to be discussing comedies. Now, obviously, there's a lot to pull from here, but we're going to focus on something in our defense here. Gentlemen, you are going to speak for a timed 1 minute each with a 30-second response to your opponent's picks. And what you're going to focus on for your minute is the performance of the lead actor as the better comedic force, we'll say. And Will, you are going to
say that again.
You're going to be defending the lead performance of the performance of your lead actor as the better comedic force.
Actor,
yes. Will, you are defending the Money Pit.
You see why I had to ask.
And Steven, you are defending Arachnophobia. Steven, you are up first. 1 minute.
So I'm guessing I'm defending John Goodman?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So John Goodman, I've already talked about him earlier, Flintstones. John Goodman is one of them actors that, of course, his physicality is involved in his comedy. But in this, he has the stupid Terminator outfit. He's got the stupid hat, the big glasses. He's got this curly hair that flows out the sides. He comes in acting like he's some Western gunslinger. He literally has a scene where he sees a spider on a walkway and he shoots at it with his spray, and it won't die. The spider won't die. So he keeps shooting at it, and he gets pissed off and he steps on it. He has great comic timing. He comes in, he's the everyman, but also the cocky everyman that you kind of like to laugh at. So John Goodman's just the best.
I said 20 seconds. I made you stop.
I thought you said 3 seconds. But John Goodman, he just has such great timing. He plays the physicality. He has the outfit. He has shit. He has shit. He literally goes around a toilet in this movie.
Will, 30 seconds against Arachnophobia. Ready, go.
I agree. John Goodman's a national treasure. Arachnophobia is an underrated movie. It's kind of hard for me to see it as a comedy. In many ways, I find it terrifying, and I'm not even afraid of spiders. So, I would say it's a solid movie. I don't think it stands up to the one that I'm about to talk about, but they're also kind of different genres. So we'll blame Ryan for that one.
It was the perfect fit, and your time is up. Will, you got 1 minute to defend The Money Pit.
All right. First of all, it's shot by Gordon Willis, right? The King of Darkness.
We're focusing on lead performance of the comedic actor.
That does not count against my time. I'll be getting to that.
Yes, it does.
Which creates the perfect milieu for Tom Hanks to explore some of the darker elements of his character. His character is very is put in these very slapstick situations, but he's also going through a very intense, at what he perceives to be a love triangle between his current wife and her ex-husband, played by Alexander Goodenough, the great ballet dancer who defected from
20
the
seconds.
Tom Hanks has the perfect combination of frazzled everyman, Three Stooges slapstick performance, and kind of tender romance as he plays against all of these great actors. And it's a very good remake of a racist-ass movie called Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House.
Stephen, 30 seconds against The Money Pit.
So look, we all love Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is I would agree. I would even say, you know, he is like a national treasure. He's an American actor, but he's not. He honestly, I don't think his comedy chops are always there. I think sometimes he has great, you know, facial features, but he doesn't always. You know, it's probably the screenwriter's fault. He doesn't great. The lines in this film are not great. I don't think his chemistry with the lead actress is that great in this film. I don't really love the movie at all. So I mean, really, I think you're just banking on his star power here as the reason why you think he's
time.
Wow. Well, first of all, he was not a star at this time.
Okay, Will, we're going on to the next one. Okay, for the fourth and final one in this round, we're going to be discussing thriller and thriller adjacent titles, and you can bend the definition of that to match your film however you see fit. Will is going to be defending Kurosawa's Dreams. Steven is going to be defending Twister. I never thought I'd see the day that Dreams went up against Twister.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Will, you are up first this round. No time limit. Go ahead and bloviate as much as you want.
No time limit. Well, that's perfect for a film like Dreams, which is
Time's up. Go ahead, Steven. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
So Dreams is kind of a film that Spielberg, along with Scorsese, and I think Coppola had something to do with it as well, kind of brought to Western audiences. And it is sumptuous. I'm going to get to the thriller part of it in a minute. But it is exactly as the title says, it is renditions of several dreams. It's an anthology film in that sense. And several of the dreams include ghost characters in which the dreamer is kind of working through feelings of guilt, terror, trauma, etc. And some of them are quite chilling, particularly a dream set near a tunnel in which some dead brigade of soldiers are marching through. It is a film that, along with Ron, exhibits one of the brightest and most emotionally nuanced color palettes that Kurosawa ever used. As a little in joke, it features Scorsese in an acting role as Vincent van Gogh. It's a film that, you know, if you're a fan of something like Twister, you might find slow and meandering, but it's every bit as twisted in the way that it travels through the psyches of its characters' subconscious. I think one of the best films ever to render dreams visually on screen in some kind of narrative way. Absolutely gorgeous. It's just been upgraded to 4K, or it's about to be upgraded to 4K on Criterion, and I would urge people to see it if they haven't already. A great coda for Kurosawa's career and for his life.
Steven, have you seen Dreams?
I have not. It is one that I am. It's on the list. It's probably going to be on my show unwatched pile coming every month. No advertisement here, but it's definitely one I definitely want to catch up on. I'm a Kurosawa fan, so I need to get to it. But so I can't knock. It's a good. I'm sure it's great. Sure, I'm a big fan. So
I've not seen it yet either. I'm eager to. Can't wait for this to be out on UHD. Steven, go ahead and jump into why Twister is actually sneaky good.
Look, let me set the scene for you. At the very beginning, it's nighttime, middle America. You have a young girl who's the wind's blowing, and the dad, let's go. The fucking tornado comes out of nowhere, and they have to go down in the cellar, and then the dog's still out there, and you're like, fuck, they're gonna kill a dog in the first couple minutes of this movie. He gets there just in time to get him in the cellar, but then the lock on the door will not stay because the twister is so powerful, and it pulls the dad up into the sky, and the girl's just screaming for his dad. That is the beginning of this movie. Fucking amazing beginning. Sets the stage for what will be a thrill ride with not only Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton at the center, but Philip Seymour fucking Hoffman, who is stealing the show every time he's on screen. And what's great about, we know what's even in, this, Will, some of your favorite, movies you might talk about tonight. You mix that horror and you mix that comedy, and it makes it even better. And so in this film, when the thrills are at their best, Philip Seymour Hoffman pops in there and he says something great, or he does something great. He's like, "It's the suck zone." You'll say something like that. And so this film, also what's traumatizing, makes it even more thrilling is the fact that Bill Paxton's trying to divorce Helen Hunt. She will not sign the papers. And what's more, I don't know, anybody that's trying to get divorced knows how difficult that is. I don't know. I'm not trying to get divorced, but how thrilling that can be, just trying to get her to sign that papers. And then you go and you start chasing fucking tornadoes. There are scenes where they're under bridges and the tornado's right there. They're in the suck zone, as they say. And then there's also Carol Elways, who's the rival, and they're all fighting to get to the biggest tornado and use the device to measure the inside of the tornado. Great thrill ride. You see cows swirling in the air. To me, it's one of them things that you saw for advertisement for Blu-ray, and you would see the cow swirling on all the advertisements, because it is one of the most memorable. And that's why they don't make a lot of Twister movies, because this one stole the show.
Will, how do you feel about Twister? And not, let's say on these, actually share how you feel instead of attacking your opponent.
Come on, attack me, man. Come on.
I have to reset my whole personality to do that. I saw Tornado with Bruce Campbell. I didn't see Twister, but it sounds like these adults are really selfish and don't care about what they're doing to their children.
Thrilling.
They're chasing tornadoes and getting, man, that sounds like bad parenting to me all the way around.
I don't know that any of them have kids, so I think you're okay.
Okay, I hope not, because it sounds like not. Well, I guess the one kid in the movie definitely lost her dad.
Well, that was Helen Hunt as a child.
Oh,
she's out for revenge to find the big tornado that killed her dad.
She's trying to get revenge against a tornado.
Yeah.
Have you never seen Twister, really, Will?
I can see how that would cause problems in a relationship,
Yeah.
No, I've never seen Twister. What? When would I?
How? This is like one of the most watched movies of all time.
Well, I mean, if a bunch of people want to jump off a bridge, that doesn't mean I'm going to jump off a bridge.
Why not? We're all doing it. Anyways, Twister is amazing, and I do agree that it's pretty damn thrilling.
I'll take your word for it. But I'll tell you something. About Twister. I'll tell you why I didn't see it. There was like a music video by the Goo Goo Dolls from the soundtrack of Twister, and I couldn't.
Don't tell me you needed to go see City of Angels instead.
Oh God, no! I would never. Are you kidding? No way.
All right, you started off with Goo Goo Dolls, and the first thing I thought was Iris, and right around that time, City of Angels came out. So.
Okay. Well, you've got the Goo Goo Doll lore down.
I do.
I'm kind
Give
of
up forever to touch you, man.
well. I could get behind that, but
We're not far apart. I'm like 20 minutes away from where you're at. So
yeah, we really should have done this together. If we had planned it out right, we could have. We could have played like a strip version where like every round the loser has to remove.
Speaking of that, round 1 is now officially over. We have gone through all 4 of our initial discussions. Reminder again of what happened. Will defended young Sherlock Holmes against Stephen's The Flintstones. Stephen responded with "I Want to Hold Your Hand" against Will's Joe versus the Volcano. We discussed comedy and comedy adjacent, with Stephen defending Arachnophobia against Will's The Money Pit. And then Will closed us out defending Dreams against Stephen's Twister. So now this is where it's different from last time. Last time we used to vote after every single vote, or every single debate, sorry. This time, take all of those debates in their entirety. We are going to give our vote in chat right now with the words Will or Stephen, whichever one you think is better. And that is based purely on who defended their 4 picks. That way it's not about a certain movie against the other movie. It is about how they defended their 4 picks. Yes, Stan, that was only round 1. We got 3 left. And they each get shorter, I promise. Please put a name in the chat if you were voting for Will or Stephen.
Ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-ba-da-da-da-da-ba.
Stan says Will, my man. Christian says Will. Jeremy says Will. Anthony says Will. Sorry, Stephen. Video Store Review says I'm going Will.
Well, I appreciate it.
It looks like this whole thing's fixed, people.
All right, look, I was about to say I don't feel great about it. You chose the topic, which I don't care about. I'm doing my best here.
We got to vote for Stephen.
Oh,
For Will.
I do love these movies, though.
Sardis says Stephen. All right, so round 1, it looks like the Wills are going to take it, and round 2 is going to be a little bit different. We are going to be discussing 3 different debates, and this time we are going to be discussing the films that are going to fit in some under-discussed topics, and you're going to focus on that topic specifically. One of these 3 rounds will be timed, and I will tell you when that is up.
Hey, before we get into it, can I say something real quick?
No. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Huh.
I just want to say first, this is such an honor to be here. It's such an honor to this is our first time talking, really.
it is. It is.
Yeah. So happy to be here. And I really appreciate everybody who's watching, because what Ryan's doing is a very ancient thing, right? This is the basis of education in ancient Greece, and it's something that Plato would have abhorred, because Plato was all about truth. What we're doing is called rhetorical sophistry, right? And what the sophists were like the first college professors, and they would go around to the different polises, poli, and they would offer their services in oration and writing to help people become effective speakers and possibly politicians. And for the sophists, and I'm getting to my point here. For the sophists, it didn't really matter. It didn't really matter what their students' goals were, right? Their job was to teach them how to be effective speakers. The sophists didn't judge whether something was good or bad. But Plato, on the other hand, who was a fascist, had this idea that there was only one universal truth that everybody had to adhere to. And so to give common people the tools to effectively argue against a philosopher like himself was dangerous. And so what I like about this show is that it puts us all in a situation, not just the contestants and guests, but the audience, to to judge these sophistic arguments, and I have lost the room to total boredom. So, in celebration of Kurosawa, my sake.
But I will say back, Will, it's great to finally get a talk with you and meet you, and even though we only live 20 minutes from each other, we should have done it already. And this is just we're trying to put on a show, but it's for fun. This is for fun, and I'm trying my best, and I'm gonna fight you back. I know Ryan's saying be honest, but I'm gonna fight you when I need to fight you. I don't care.
This is going to be a fun one because we're going to start with a round that is probably going to get a little spicy on both ends. We're going to go through films that are technical marvels. Will is going to be defending one that he listed as an audible because the one that he had listed in this round was found to be an uncredited Steven Spielberg producerial role. We are going to be bringing in instead Twilight Zone, the movie, and Steven is going to be defending Real Steel. Steven, you can go first in this round, please.
So, of course, my film came out pretty recently. It has the advantage of pretty modern technology, where we have probably motion capture going on to play the robot in the story. And of course, Hugh Jackman, and he has his young son that he's trying to bond with. And in the film, they have this robot that they go in and they do basically Rock'em Sock'em Robots with. And so in this film, you really have to do a great job of making us feel like that the action going on between these CGI characters is really happening. Not only does the sound design need to be great, but the visually what we see in this, where the metal has to hit metal, has to look good. And I think they do a great job of making us feel like that this is actually something that's happening in the film. You have sparks happening. You have the rusty, the main robot that they make is all rusted up and everything. They make it look real. And sometimes when you're talking about textures are sometimes hard to get right when we're talking about CGI. But they do a really good job, I think, of compositing this together to make it a really realistic and rustic world. Where these robots are fighting each other. And I think that it makes it when a movie is making you not think about the effects, it's doing its job. And I think that they do that and make you when we talk about this film, we're always talking about how the story relates to a film like Rocky. It's like Rocky with Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Well, we don't think about the effects. We're thinking about the story and the characters because the CGI does its job. To me, that's why this film does its job when it comes to its effects.
Will, how do you feel about Real Steel?
It's hard to get through because when I watch that Australian song and dance man act like he can fight, I'm just taken out of the movie. But I'm going to take a hard pivot here because one thing that I'll compliment the movie on is indeed its effective use of CGI. And when I talk about the Twilight Zone, I'm actually going to talk about something tragic. As many of you know, the Twilight Zone was marred by a terrible accident on the set of John Landis's segment. Landis and his crew repeatedly, despite many warnings, flew a helicopter that had the actor Vic Morrow and two Vietnamese children too close to an explosion. The helicopter was damaged and the rotors dismembered all three actors. Two children and Vic Morrow, a great actor, the father of Jennifer Jason Leigh. John Landis was eventually brought up on charges of involuntary manslaughter. There was copious evidence that Landis and his closest collaborators knew that they were breaking rules, and in fact, it was fairly commonplace that safety rules were often ignored. I'm not bringing in Spielberg, Dante, or George Miller, who directed their own segments. They were not part of Landis's segment. Now, when Landis went to trial, 16 directors, including Francis Ford Coppola, Ron Howard, John Huston, George Lucas, Sidney Lumet, and Billy Wilder, all signed a letter in support of John Landis, saying that he should be absolved of any responsibility, of which, again, copious evidence indicates that he knew he was taking huge risks with Vic Morrow and 2 children, who, by the way, were working illegally past the allotted hours that child actors are allowed to work. Now, why am I saying this when I'm supposed to defend a film produced by Spielberg? And that is because, and this is the most complimentary thing you'll ever hear me say about Spielberg. Spielberg not only did not sign that letter, but said in a 1983 interview during the trial, and I pulled up the exact quote because I don't want to mess it up, "No movie is worth dying for. I think people are standing up much more now than ever before to producers and directors who ask too much. If something isn't safe, it's the right and responsibility of every actor or crew member to yell, 'Cut.'" And I do think it is an absolute stain on all of those directors who signed the letter, all of whom I respect, most of whom I respect, some of whom I do not. But I truly do respect Spielberg for taking the stand that he did. Landis did get off and continued his career. Some suggest that his career was damaged by it, but it was not. He went on to do Spies Like Us and Coming to America after Twilight Zone. So Twilight Zone is on my list as a replacement for a film that I actually liked, but was uncredited. I do like the way most of Twilight Zone turned out, but the behind the scenes integrity that Spielberg indicated or exhibited, I should say, is why I will defend the movie, and why I appreciate why something like Real Steel does not put Mr. Jackman, who has very soft hands, into any real danger as he tries to impress his boy with his feat of fake fighting.
Well, they're pacifists. They're not actually fighting each other. They're fighting robots. I mean, it's the future, man. Why do we need to fight each other?
I got to tell you, and this is not part of the argument but when that movie came out, I couldn't help but think of that show on Comedy Central that lasted for a couple seasons where people would build these
BattleBots.
I was like, is this BattleBots the movie? And no, it turns out it's like Over the Top and Kramer versus Kramer, right? It's like, what's the Norm Macdonald joke? What was Kramer versus Kramer missing? Oh yeah, arm wrestling. Over the Top. And now you got Kramer versus Kramer, but it's robot sock'em, rock'em sock'em.
Steven, how do you feel about Twilight Zone, the movie?
It's an anthology film that, some of the films are better than the others. The Spielberg segment's okay. I to be honest, it's not one of my favorite, things. I'm not a huge fan of I like the Twilight Zone show, but the movie, it's fine.
That was an interesting take on the entire round. I'm glad that it was as copacetic as it could have been there. The next one, we are going to do our timed round, and we're going to talk about why you are defending the better intro to horror for a young adolescent. Will, you are defending Gremlins. Steven, you're defending Casper. Will, you can go first. You have 1 minute to defend Gremlins. Ready? Go.
Gremlins is a film that, again, and this is one of the films that led to the creation of PG-13 as a rating. This is a film that recognizes what kids are, which is mean, spiteful, and violent at the same time that they are cute and delightful and innocent, right? Kids are both of those things at all times. And really, the dichotomy of the Mogwai and the Gremlins is quite representative of the yin and yang of children. This was
20 seconds.
This was a Christmas movie whose lead actress explains that the reason she doesn't celebrate Christmas is because her father died and rotted in a chimney. And that's awesome. That's a great way for a kid to get into Christmas movies. And there's a gremlin in a microwave.
Jesus.
Perfect kids movie. Perfect.
Steven, you got a minute to defend Casper as the better intro to horror. Ready, begin.
All right, so this might not be the hardest horror film to hit a kid with to scar him for the rest of his life, but it is a film that is about ghosts. Of course, ghosts can be scary to kids, and to me, the thing that's good about this movie is that, of course, the central characters are kids. You have Bill Pullman's the father. You got Christina Ricci's his daughter, and they're dealing with the death of the mother in the family, and so that's what the film's about. It's about talking about death. And so Casper's character comes in, of course, as somebody that's already died, that's been left in this house. He's bullied by these 3 other ghosts in the house. And really, it's a good movie for kids to be intro because it can be scary, but it also can be light and funny for them so that they can take a step back to then be, introduced back to some scary stuff again. And to me, like I said, not only at the middle of it, it's also got a good message talking about dealing with death. So I think it's a great intro for kids.
If you want them to be weak.
Will, you got 30 seconds against Casper. What do you got?
Well, the thing about Gremlins and it is that it introduces kids to death how it really is, which is awful and sad and with no possibility of ever talking to them again. And Casper has this like spiritual conceit that like, oh, well, they're always still with us. No, they're fucking not. That's why it's sad. And I just think it's a disingenuous movie.
Steven, 30 seconds against Gremlins.
Well, we obviously know the thing about Gremlins is it's manipulative. I mean, it literally wraps itself as a Christmas movie with a furry creature and then tricks everybody into watching it thinking it's going to be a kid's movie and then, caused everybody to be upset. I'm not saying that that's not cool, but I'm saying as a real introduction for kids that's not really good for them. They don't need to be tricked. They need to be told straight. You're saying it's straight. It's actually a trick. You're not really, showing it how it is. So to me, you need to be honest with their storytelling and show them what it is.
The microwave showed how it was.
So I got to say, both of these surprisingly good cast, which we did not talk about at all. Dick Miller, incredible in Gremlins. And then, of course, in Casper, like kind of everybody is.
Clint Eastwood's in it. He's in it for like a second.
I didn't even get into Phoebe.
He shows
Cates.
Up in for like a second.
Yeah, Phoebe Cates is a big point for Gremlins there.
When Zach Gilligan, this was the one role he did before like going full Andy Sedaris. And I just love that. I love that a future Andy Sedaris actor is the lead for Gremlin.
All right, solid debate there. And to end round 2, we've got a fun one because this is a very it's very philosophical as the way we're going to debate this.
We got to talk about Plato again.
Is that Galligan? What did I say his name was?
I think you said Galligan. Yeah.
Nice.
We are going to go for which of these two is the most nostalgic. So it's a very objective choice here. Steven, you're going to be defending The Land Before Time. Will, you're defending Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, all right.
Steven, you are up first.
Wait. Point of order. Nostalgic for whom?
However you wanted to debate, my friend.
You said this is timed?
Nope, this one is free.
Okay. All right, so we know that this is a classic animated film from the '80s. Don Bluth worked on this. He's kind of a part of the Disney, great creators. And this film, of course, is about a group of dinosaurs that are trying to make their way to a safe place. They're all young children, you have I don't remember all their names. I'm sorry. Littlefoot. There's like 4 different dinosaurs, and they're all coming from different backgrounds. One's a long neck, one's a 3-horn. And the film really is nostalgic because, who as children didn't play with dinosaurs? As kids, you had toy dinosaurs, you bring them together. And if you saw this movie, you of course probably named him after that movie. Littlefoot, you have the Littlefoot character, you have the Bronchiosaurus. To me, that movie and the story in that film, which of course is it's not just a good kids movie, but it is a film I think adults can watch and understand and be nostalgic about. And in the film, the main character Littlefoot loses his mom and he needs to make his way to this valley. And so along the way, he meets other dinosaurs that also don't have their parents. So to me, it's really, delving into that kind of classic genre of finding learning, being thrown into the fire and learning about life through experience. And so I think this film really, like I said, at the core, just really hits home, not only with its literalness of being about dinosaurs, but also the Don Bluth animation, his storytelling, and would continue later into his career, which we probably will bring up later. But yeah, I think Land Before Time is just kind of a classic story that would continue to be repeated later. So
be repeated later like 14 more times.
Yeah. And not as good, but that first one is good.
All right, Will. First, before we get into your choice, what do you feel about The Land Before Time?
Nothing.
Well, that's sad.
I don't feel any nostalgia towards it. I'm a little. When did that come out?
I think it's 86.
Yeah,
86.
Well, yeah, I guess I didn't. I don't know. I never saw it. 86. That's when the Transformers movie came out, right?
I feel like that was 85 or 84.
Because I can tell you one thing: when the Transformers movie came out, that's all I. Nope, 86. That explains it.
Oh.
I'm not even sure I've seen Land Before Time. I've definitely seen the Transformers movie a million times, but Spielberg had nothing to do with that. So no, I have no feelings towards Land Before Time whatsoever. I know that there's like 20 of them, and kids, they talk about manipulative, right? It's sad dinosaurs looking for their dead mom, and they're reptiles, so that doesn't even, they don't care.
All right. So on that happy note, let's go into Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Will.
Oh man, rabbits care. They've got emotional core. So 1988, 2 years after Land Before Time and Transformers the movie, a absolute marvel in animation and live action interaction. This is, I think, one of the best Robert Zemeckis films. It is a perfect genre mashup of noir, kind of Looney Tunes slapstick, and horror. Really, at the end, Christopher Lloyd's evil Toon character at the end is freaking hard. Like, I'm thinking of it right now and getting that feeling again. So we talk about nostalgia. Oh my gosh, all of the feelings that I had as a 10-year-old. I was 10 when it came out. You've got Jessica Rabbit as a very unhealthy depiction of idealized white European womanhood. Yet nevertheless, for a 10-year-old, it's like, oh my God, things are happening. You've got these in-jokes that adults can appreciate, but kids can recognize too, with all the like Disney and Warner Brothers Looney Tunes interactions, and other cartoon characters. And then you've got the story, the quintessential noir story, with a femme fatale, a clueless male lead who occasionally stumbles into competence, and a gumshoe played by Bob Hoskins in one of his greatest performances. I say unreservedly, for a man mostly known for deep, dark, and layered dramas. He really brought that gravitas to the role, and I think he made Roger Rabbit come together in a way that it wouldn't have if they had gotten a comedic actor to do it. He really inhabited that noir atmosphere. So the concept of going to Toontown, the different physics and rules of engagement, the mystery story, the noirish mystery story, the violence associated with it. You've got the cartoon violence that kids already were kind of inured to with Looney Tunes and Disney, mixed with actual repercussions of violence in the real world that kind of took it to a darker place. As far as the question of nostalgia goes, this is a film that really could take the generation of Gen X and Millennial back to a place where they were really awakening to a whole lot of things at once. I just love Who Framed Roger Rabbit, not to mention the fact that it's a technical marvel and deserves to be taught in every introductory film course in the country. Nay, the world.
Steven, how do you feel about Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I mean, I can't really. I mean, it's probably one of my favorite Zemeckis films. I can't really fight it. It's pretty good. I mean, I love film noir. The film noir aspect is great. I do think the movie's, of course, even for its time, it's being nostalgic because it's nostalgic about the animated characters that it owns, which in a way kind of makes it a marketing machine type of movie. It's all about marketing these things that are already popular. If I want to fight anything negative against it, but but I do like the movie. I can't fight it. It's a cool movie. So.
Just like that, we have come to the end of round 2, and not to. Let's take a vote before I say anything because I don't want to sway any scales. Let's go into this round 2. We had the technical marvels pick as Will defended the Twilight Zone the movie against Steven's pick of Real Steel. For intro to horror films, Steven defended Casper against Will's pick of Gremlins, and as you just witnessed, most nostalgic, Will defended Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Steven defended The Land Before Time. Make a pick in the chat, please, of who you think did better this time. Did Will continue to dominate? Did Steven wake up and get his muscles relaxed finally and be able to defend everything? I feel like this was a very solid round, and I think some really fun picks here.
I liked watching Steven flex his index finger.
As we wait on votes, Steven, what's coming up on Chasing Labels?
Oh, we got an interview coming out next week. We did take a week off, but next week we got an interview with a projectionist out in LA. Her name is she goes by Mistress of the Reel. So she deals with actual film reels out there. She was a theater manager, and so we'll have that along with the normal Blu-ray talk next week. So yeah, and got a couple other things lined up, interviews lined up coming up in the next month. But yeah, just doing our thing, doing what you do, talking Blu-rays, not doing as much as you're doing, of course, but yeah.
I'm glad you're there. I will always support you.
We got to get started on Shelf Shock too, by the way.
I don't want to discuss that.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't either. I really don't, but I keep bringing it up. I'm like, dude, we need to talk about this.
Yo, Blade in the Dark, man. Packaging. I'm telling you. All right. Whatever. Shelf Shock.
Funny enough.
Whatever. Fucking.
Sorry to intrude.
Funny enough, we were at a dead heat, I believe. Okay, I'm going to go through this. 1 for Steve, 1 for Will, 2 for Steve, 2 for Will, 3 for Will, 3 for Steve, 4 for Will, 5 for Will, 4 for Steve, 5 for Steve, and a 6th vote for Will. Is that it?
Wow.
Will is up by 1 because of Sardis. After Sardis has been insulting Will.
You know what? That's okay. I appreciate however anybody votes. I appreciate that everybody's watching. It's debate is a very subjective thing, and I don't take any of it personally.
I agree. We're only going to make it worse for the final 2 rounds. But first, I did kind of want to say that whole last round, I I honestly think Bob Hoskins might be the star performer of the entire night. There's not much that you can hold up to his performance and say this is definitely better.
I did say Bob Hoskins, right?
Yes. Yours was a tie, but I gave it to Will. Will on Twilight Zone, Steven on Casper, tie in the last one. Jeez. Okay, so technically, it's 4-4 still.
Wait, what?
I read the first part of Dude McMahon's comment, but not the whole thing. It's technically a tie. So first round went to Will. Second round is a full-blown tie. I love it. We're going to go into our third round, and our third round, as usual, this is the first time this has ever happened, so as usual is the joke there. This is only going to have 2 different debates, and these, again, are going to be very subjective, completely subjective. This first one, Will, you are going to be defending first. We are going for the most underrated film in Steven's work on the producerial side. You are defending Inner Space. Steven, go ahead.
Wait, who's defending Inner Space?
Will is.
Okay.
Did I say Steven?
Well, I just was confused at the line.
Okay.
You go ahead.
He said Steven. You said Steven's work.
Sorry.
Yeah. I remember my name is the same as the director, the producer, so it confuses me.
Okay, I'll say Spielberg from now on.
Yeah, Spielberg.
Will, you're defending Inner Space as the most underrated Spielberg produced film. Steven, you were going to go with Men in Black. Will, you're up first.
Wait. You're saying Men in Black is underrated?
I actually would say that it is, yes.
Okay.
You're up first, Will.
Yeah.
I feel like well, that's kind of an inside baseball reference, but I feel like that moment in the presidential debates between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, when Mitt was talking about like all this information he had, and Barack knew he was full of shit, so Barack was like, "Proceed."
I mean, I would actually say that it is a very underrated film, to be quite honest.
Well, to be clear, I'm casting myself as Obama in this scenario.
Oh, we understood.
And Steve is Mitt Romney.
Great.
Hey, man, you got integrity. You stood up. You stood up and said,
"Yeah, politicians have integrity." Okay, all right.
Carry on. Go ahead, Will.
What am I talking about? Inner Space. Oh, man. Best remake of Fantastic Voyage ever. What a great concept. The idea of Dennis Quaid getting shrunk down and injected into the ass of Martin Short. Right? Like, again, what an elevator pitch. This has it all. It's got international intrigue, like action, spy stuff. It's got peak Meg Ryan, like shortish haircut Meg Ryan. It's got peak Martin Short physical comedy, like the face, rubber facial expressions, elastic body. Really, like the stuff that Jim Carrey does. Like Martin Short does not get enough credit for Jim Carrey, honestly. So this, I think, is Martin Short's best performance. Dennis Quaid at his most charming. I mean, every time that man smiles in the movie, I'm like, what's my sexuality again? I'm not sure, and I'm happy about it. I'm happy to think about these feelings I'm having. This is 1987, so I was 11 years old. No, I was 9 years old. So it was like the best. I was hearing the occasional curse word and watching like this action and seeing some things that I was like, oh, this makes me feel tingly, while at the same time really enjoying the slapstick that I understood at that age. But it's a movie that ages really, really well, because as with most Dante movies, you go back to it and you see all of the bits of business on the edges of the frame. You catch more and more of the wordplay. You start to recognize the technique and the frenetic editing, the really great practical special effects. We've talked a lot about CGI, but we haven't talked about practical effects. And Joe Dante is a master. I think, and on my list, there were 4 different Joe Dante movies. I think that's 4 of the best things that Steven Spielberg ever did. I do not like Steven Spielberg as a filmmaker, but I love the patronage that he gave to so many directors who were absolute visionaries, but would not have gotten the commercial opportunities. Like, there's no way Joe Dante would have gotten the budgets to make the types of films that Inner Space and Gremlins 2, Small Soldiers, etc., which was disallowed. Anyway, Inner Space, though, I think is his most aimed at like a mainstream adult audience movie, and I think that's why it's underrated, because he can't really catch a mainstream adult audience. He's too quirky, he's too strange, and he's too much of a cinephile. Inner Space, like all Joe Dante movies, is a collage, a tapestry of film references, the kind of collage that Quentin Tarantino pretends to make, but does not have the intellectual and thematic heft to make at the level that Joe Dante does. Joe Dante himself is an underrated filmmaker, and one who really has his pulse on American pop culture, which is why this, as a remake of a loose remake of Fantastic Voyage, is such an important film. I agree with Stan that I would love to see like a full-on remake or reboot or reimagining or whatever of Fantastic. But that's what's so great about Dante, right? Is he'll take these ideas from the past and do something totally new with them. And watching Inner Space from a post-QAnon, post-COVID point of view, right? The idea of this ship with a human person navigating through your body, that's something that people would believe right now, because it's true.
The serious eyes made that work. Steven, any thoughts on Inner Space?
I guess if you wanted the adult Magic School Bus, fine. I mean, it's an okay movie. I mean, it's I was about to shit all over it. It's a fun movie. It's fun. I think it is. Seeing Dennis Quaid, that young Dennis Quaid, that smile, him playing kind of essentially a body astronaut. It's a cool concept, and I actually kind of agree that it is underrated, but I don't think it's more underrated than my movie.
So before we get into that argument, oh my gosh, the comments light up and rip me a new one when I said Men in Black was underrated. I wanted to highlight the difference between 2 different words, and that is the difference between underseen and underrated. Just because Men in Black has a shit ton of money made at the box office, just because everybody and their mother has seen it, doesn't mean that it's rated properly overall. Because
my mom hasn't seen it.
You can see a film and think that it's a so-so film, and 7 billion other people can see it and say the exact same thing, and it could overall be an underrated film, even though so many people in the world have seen it. However, it's not the exact same thing. When you look at that, you got to look at a film and go, what does the zeitgeist feel about this as a whole? And Steven, why don't you tell us about Men in Black?
Yeah, the point I was definitely I was gonna make that point, that it's not just about making, people confuse that, making money versus whether something is actually looked at as a good movie. And we know a lot of shitty movies make a lot of money, so let's not get into that debate. Let's look at every Fast and the Furious movie. I'm sorry,
Spielberg produced a lot of those.
yeah, Transformers, the $1 billion movies that are not good, but maybe years from now people will come back and say they were actually pretty good. Now Men in Black. Of course, this is directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who I think is just alone an underrated director of his time. Like he did things like the Addams Family and Addams Family Values and Get Shorty. He did some cool movies of that time. And then with Men in Black, you're looking at one of them this was that time when comic book films were starting to kind of like pick up some steam. And this one was kind of off kilter, not a straight up superhero story, but like a movie about a world within a world. You got this secret government organization, kind of something we see in a lot of this genre, where there's a secret government organization that polices the alien activity in the universe. And so we have, this great world that's like picked, slowly uncovered. It mostly takes place in New York, and we get to see the underground alien thing going through this whole movie. And I think what gets underrated about this film, of course, first of all, you bring up effects. Rick Baker it's to me one of his better films, and I think it gets lost because it is such it has a popularity to it that it gets lost that it's one of his best works. I mean, all the different alien designs and makeup work that they do, specifically, of course, with Vincent D'Onofrio, who is the main villain of the story. He plays a cockroach alien, and it's one of the, it's one of the things I remember about the movie the most, where, that whole scene when he first gets introduced and he comes up to the house and he's like, "I want water with sugar," he really like does an amazing job. His skin is loose. It's like it's really like it's a meat suit, and that's the work of Rick Baker doing a great job of somehow getting Vincent D'Onofrio's facial features in this suit, but also making it look like it's out of this world. Like it's great. And so like to me, Men in Black, it finds this great tone that I think gets copied a bunch of times with films like this. Is that great balance between sci-fi, action movie, and comedy. We did have films throughout this time that were action comedies, but not with that sci-fi twist so much. And so I think that this movie did set a standard for that really well. And yes, the main performances are fantastic. You got Tommy Lee Jones, who is being directed to play it straight. Looking into this movie, he wanted to play it more comical, but the director was like, "No, you have to play it straight because Will Smith's going to come in with the comedy." And it really ended up, making the movie. And I think that that's one of the other things that get lost about the movie as well, is the chemistry there that they built. Of course, went on to make 2 more sequels. It's a successful, if it wasn't for this movie being what it is, it would 3 sequels. I just forget about that one because it doesn't have the two main actors in it.
Wasn't there a series too?
There might have been an animated series as well. But it's, to me, you can. I'm probably going to lose this argument because they're not going to agree with the idea that it's underrated. But I do believe it is underrated because it is something that we take for granted. We look at it, it made a lot of money, but it did a lot of things at the time, and it looks fantastic still. It's something like Jurassic Park, where you go back and you look at it and you're like, it still looks amazing. This film does the same thing. It has a lot of great effects. You got, little cameos. You got Tony Shalhoub, who's this alien who's at a pawn shop that you blow his head off and then it grows back. Great comedy bit that gets used throughout the series. And just, like I said, it's got so many great little characters. It's got, the talking dog. That's great. And the way they do the talking dog is way better than they do talking dogs in a lot of movies today, where it looks really fake. And to me, this movie and Little Nicky does it fantastic. Does it the right way. It looks great. So, to me, this might be a controversial pick, but I think it's the right pick as an underrated movie.
Will.
I agree. It reminds me of Little Nicky too. Look,
I didn't say the movie reminds me of Little Nicky. Don't twist my words.
Look, I don't. It's not your fault, but Men in Black was nominated for 3 Oscars, won 1 for Rick Baker.
So now we're saying the Oscars mean something?
Oh, this is my time. It won 3 Saturn Awards, 3 sequels, and an animated series. My point is, sure, we take it for granted, fine, but we don't. It's not underrated. The fact that it's taken for granted indicates that it is suffused into the culture and has tons of and influenced special effects and influenced films that came after it. Whereas on the other hand, what was I talking about? Inner Space.
He doesn't even care about the movie he was talking about.
Well, you swept me away with what you were saying.
Which means that my argument was probably better because it was actually captivating.
No, I was trying to follow it. It was difficult, but
okay.
Inner Space was this moment in time that happened, and it did not, make a ton of money. It certainly didn't get any sequels or lead to additional work for Joe Dante. But you go back and look at it, and it's like, wow, this movie really said something about the 80s. It really brought together all these cultural strains from the 50s, 60s, and 70s into the 80s. And it was a total innovator in practical special effects. So, Men in Black is fine for what it was. I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I was totally amused. But it just doesn't have the level of substance to return to. It just doesn't.
Wow, that was a really funny comment. So yeah, I'd push back on a lot of this, but again, I don't want to put my thumb on the scale too much. So this next one, we literally only have 2 debates left for the entire show. The next one is the main wild card tonight, and that means you were both defending a film that was not present on either of your lists.
Wow.
Will, you were going to be defending, and I chose this, and this was written on my notes long before you started texting me anything tonight. You were defending The Mask of Zorro. Okay. Steven, you were defending Super 8.
Wait, he did Super 8? You sure?
He produced it. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Steven, you are up first on this one.
Okay. Super 8. Not timed either. Not timed.
Not timed.
All right. Super 8, directed by J.J. Abrams, starring a young group of actors. But I believe, I'm trying to think of the actor that plays the cop, the main, I can't think of his name. But he's a prominent actor. You see him in a lot of stuff on Netflix. I can't think of his name, but but it's Super 8. It's about once again, the kind of you could say the cliche of a Spielberg film, a movie about a family that's going through a hardship. Young kid uses his mom. They're living in a small town. Loses his mom at the beginning and is dealing with that problem. And his dad's just trying to, do his best. And then at some point, there starts to be weird things happen. There's a big train wreck that is apparently a government train that causes aliens. And so then it's about that kind of,
Uh-oh.
I win by default.
Okay, so we'll pause on Steven's argument. The person that he was saying was in the person that he was saying was in all of the Netflix shows was Kyle Chandler, and that made me laugh really hard. All right. Before we hopefully get him back, how do you feel about Super 8, Will?
I haven't seen it.
You've never seen Super 8?
No. I don't like J.J. Abrams. Like, what good movies has he made?
I mean, I would say Super 8 is actually a decent movie.
Wow.
Let me look up all of his.
I can't argue with
that. No, you cannot. Let's see. J.J. Abrams. What would I say? I mean, does Lost count?
Oh, man, I couldn't get through that show.
It's certain episodes are really good.
I haven't seen.
He only directed 2 episodes from the entire thing, though.
I haven't seen Mission Impossible 3. I haven't seen Star Trek Reboot. I guess I should say I shouldn't say I don't like J.J. Abrams. I'm just not interested in seeing any of the movies that he's made, which is not a judgment. I just,
Yeah, totally get this. Well, hopefully Steven returns very soon.
I got a family. We watch Jess Franco movies.
106 of them.
J.J. Abrams is no Wynorski. I think J.J. Abrams would agree.
Christian, you are not the only fan of Lost. I liked Lost for the most part.
Well, now I have to admit I bailed after like halfway through season 2, so like it might be good.
Are we good now, Stephen?
Hopefully my internet. I guess my internet dropped on me. Sorry about that, guys.
Super 8.
All right, so Super 8. So yeah, Kyle Chandler as the name I could not think of. In the film, as I was about to say, this is essentially J.J. Abrams' love letter to all things Spielberg. So it's loaded with all the Spielbergisms in it. It's to the point of the shots and a group of kids with bikes and wanting to make movies. It's all got it all in there. And so and you got young Elle Fanning in here. She's great. And, J.J. Abrams really takes it to the nth degree to show that he can't make a movie that's original at all. But this film with Super 8, I think for a nostalgic piece, it's a really fun movie. It's a really slick. It really kind of goes to that E.T. route where you have, I don't want to spoil the whole movie, but the alien comes and it's more than what it seems. And I think, it has real genuine emotion amongst the friends in the group and also the father. It's not kind of that straight up like the father, Kyle Chandler's character is just like giving him a hard time and he's wrong, but it's really genuine. They're both hurting. And I didn't fake that. That was not me. Just no. It's a film that I think out of all of Abrams' films, it's one of the more underrated ones. Though it is very much just giving you essentially an Amblin movie. But I do think that it's a watch that I think I can go back to many times. And that's Super 8.
All right.
I keep confusing it with that party movie. What was the party movie?
Party movie.
Super Bad?
No. The one. It was like a found footage movie.
Project X.
X. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep hearing Super 8 and thinking Project X.
Weird.
I don't know.
Huh. I wonder if they came out around the time and they shared some marketing or something.
Aren't they both point of view movies? Or am I wrong?
No,
Super 8 is not found footage.
No.
Oh, okay.
All right, Will. You're going to hit us on The Mask of Zorro.
All right. Well, this is going to be difficult.
That's the point.
So, and what am I trying to do?
Just defend the movie as a Spielberg produced film.
And I'm saying it's better and more important than Super 8?
Yep.
Oh, okay, no problem. 4 words. Antonio Banderas.
It's barely 1.5 words.
1.5 words. Antonio Banderas, Catherine Zeta-Jones. That's hyphenated. That's 4 words. This film, like, all right. So Madonna, of course, brought us Antonio Banderas in Truth or Dare, and fanboys know Desperado, and fans of musicals may have seen Evita. But The Mask of Zorro is what really brought Antonio Banderas into the cultural, and by cultural I mean like American cultural lexicon, right? This is what made Antonio Banderas a superstar and provided the template for the Puss in Boots franchise to come. Not only that, but this really was the film that introduced mainstream America to just how hot Catherine Zeta-Jones is. And I don't say that like in a like patriarchal sexist kind of way. I say that in a, like any human, any living creature on Earth or in the stars above, looking at Catherine Zeta-Jones in this film and a few films coming after it, like Entrapment and so on, is like, oh my God, that human being is what the perfection looks like. And then they look at Antonio and be like, wait, that is what perfection looks like. Oh my God, they should have kids. And when you watch The Mask of Zorro, you think that might I loved. So I grew up. When I grew up, I would watch like the old Mickey Mouse Club reruns and stuff on the Disney Channel, and they would occasionally do the Zorro shorts, which at the time I didn't recognize as racial caricatures, as they obviously are. But they were so fun. The idea of this swashbuckler doing some damage against corporate overlords at the time didn't recognize the irony of that being shown on the Disney Channel. And the Mask of Zorro really brings the Zorro character to a new audience, which is so important. Super 8 may well be a lot of fun, but as Stephen indicated, it's not really anything new. It's just a love letter to E.T. and Close Encounters and all things Steven Spielberg. Mask of Zorro, on the other hand, is something new. And it is not the first time that Anthony Hopkins has kind of performed in a culturally insensitive role, because he also played Othello in a BBC production of the Shakespeare play. And yes, he did wear the makeup. So yes, there's a lot of dated stuff about it, Anthony Hopkins' caricature being one of them. But the importance of this movie to the year 1998, when I was working in a video store, so I can attest that this movie was the biggest movie for video rental, at least in my experience. It had a huge cultural impact, and at some point I'll probably see it.
Steven, any thoughts on the Mask of Zorro?
He said everything I would have said. It's a fine movie. It might have had some cultural impact. I would debate that. Robert Rodriguez's Desperado might have introduced him a little bit better to the culture. I know it was an indie film, but at the time the indie scene was a big deal. And Tarantino's in the film. With Super 8, if you want to clap back about it, these movies came out at two different times. And for a lot of people at the time when Super 8 came out, Spielberg was not as big of a deal to younger audiences. For younger audiences, he's the guy that made Jurassic Park maybe, but anything he was doing current was not on anybody's radar. He was doing a lot more period movies, a lot more dramas. And for somebody to come back and remind people of what Spielberg was really like popular about is important. It's important to remind people sometimes with films that previous filmmakers that maybe have not have strayed away from their normalcy did some really great things, and I think with Super 8 it is a true love letter to him, and I think that's what makes it a better film in this argument. So
it's a good argument.
That's a good argument. That's a good argument for why inner space is important.
Let's go into the debate before Will says anything else, and then we will come back and discuss all of those together. Reminder, in this third round, we had Will defending Inner Space against Steven's Men in Black, and Steven defending Super 8 against Will's The Mask of Zorro. Please put a name in the chat as soon as you can on who defended better in round 3, just for those two debates. Let me know what you think. I asked Steven last time, Will, you got anything coming up or that you just did that you might want to tell everybody about?
I just appeared on They Live by Film, a discussion about Bruno Mattei. I talk with Chris about Mattei's career and Hell of the Living Dead and Rat's Night of Terror specifically. Coming up later this year, there are going to be not one but 2 books about Wes Craven coming out. And I have essays in each of those, one on The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, and one on his 5 television films. And I'm working on an essay about Gordon Lewis for a new book that's going to be coming out about him next year.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, and one more. Jack Arnold, the innovator of 3D technology, director of Creature from the Black Lagoon, Incredible Shrieking Man, etc. I'm doing an essay about some of his westerns for for an anthology about his work. So a lot of work on different directors, both schlocky independent exploitationeers and studio directors.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I have actually. There's a question. When are you writing about Wes Craven's best friend music from the heart? I'm actually quoted in a book. It's on the University of Mississippi Press, and it was edited by what's his name? Shannon Bleak Skelton, and he did an interview with me that he included in the introduction where I talk about how music from the heart fits into Wes Craven's career. So it's only about a paragraph, but it counts.
All right, running through some votes, we've got 1 for Steven, 1 for Will, 2 for Steven, 3 for Steven, 4 for Steven,
Wow.
2 for Will, 5 for Steven, 3 for Will. Let's see. I believe that is all of them. Steven, congratulations. So going into the last round, we have Will with 1 round, Steven with 1 round, and 1 round at a tie. So this is in a dead heat, literally. We do have one more question for Will. Is Summer of Fear worth it?
It is.
All right.
Cool.
Gentlemen, this has been a blast. Before we go into the last round, I just want to share this has been a lot of fun, and I feel like this might be the actual format moving forward, considering I've workshopped 3 of them.
I was gonna say this is flowing nice. It's flowing nice. I like it.
Good. And there's no repeated talks of any films. I've got everything in there, and I still got to throw some chaos in.
Awesome.
All right. We are going into our final round, and I simply want to hear 2 people sharing the stage discussing why Poltergeist is the absolute best film ever produced by Steven Spielberg, specifically based on his evident contributions to the film. And now I would
Okay, I got it.
now is the perfect time to have everybody discuss why Tobe Hooper clearly directed this film, and it should never even be up for debate. There's not going to be any set aside Steven talks, then Will talks. Let's just all have a discussion about how great Poltergeist is and how great Tobe Hooper directed this film. Anybody want to speak up first? Obviously, Will does.
I was gonna say this sounds like a Will question. Go ahead, Will.
No, I mean, I was actually going to say, let's pour one out for some of the movies that didn't make the cut, like Gremlins 2, the new batch, and
We're gonna bring a couple of those up afterwards. I promise.
Oh, this isn't the final.
This is the final debate, but we're still going to talk. We're going to hang out after for a minute.
Well, it depends on how it goes.
All right, Poltergeist. First off, I rewatched this one recently again, and good Lord, like this movie flows perfectly. This movie is genuinely scary, has some really great moments. I honestly, based on the question we had earlier, I think this is a really good intro to horror. Probably a little step up compared to Casper,
Yeah.
but this is a really good entry level horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, and I think the one thing that we, as I've mentioned in in discussion, all of this stuff, is that what Spielberg does really great is gets the family life thing down, And I think anytime you can make it more personal, it causes you to get comfortable, so that when the scares get there, they really can be effective. And I think that's, what Tobe Hooper does really well for this movie is that he knows how to make the film. He knows how to make you feel comfortable and then take that all away. I think that's really what maybe Spielberg doesn't provide, and I think he provides that a little bit of that fun family stuff. But I think that Tobe Hooper brings is really brings the tension of the moments, especially when they're looking for the young girl and they can't find her, and that's the stuff I think really Tobe Hooper brings to the story. But yeah, I mean it's a great it is. I think it is a good entryway for somebody that's trying to get into something a little harder. The story is not overly complicated, but it's also got some it's got somewhat of a mythology behind it, But yeah, I mean, please, Will, elaborate more. You're deep into Tobe Hooper, so.
Yeah, I think so. Just going into that original question of what we think Spielberg brought to the production. The first and most important answer is money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's no way Tobe Hooper is going to get a project this big, and that gave Hooper an opportunity to really get his vision on the screen. Now, as far as the fact that the film was kind of co-written in collaboration by Hooper and Spielberg is really important because this is a film that really is more suburban than Hooper's general films. Hooper's films tend to focus on working class and lower middle class people, but this is set in the signature Spielberg locale, right? Upper middle class suburbanites in the Midwest and Southwest.
On burial grounds.
Yeah. And one thing that I'll give Spielberg credit for is the fact that Hooper had a much darker vision of the suburbs than Spielberg. Spielberg's a very nostalgic filmmaker. It's one of the reasons I don't like him that much. Because it doesn't appeal to me. Like I don't dislike other people for liking Spielberg. It's just that his kind of nostalgia for the suburbs doesn't appeal to me. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trailer parks. I don't know what that kind of money feels like. So I have I look back on that kind of childhood and I'm like, fuck these kids and their problems,
Hey,
So,
I grew up in a trailer park too. So
yeah. And it's still okay to like Spielberg, even if you don't necessarily have that same experience. But for me, I carry a lot of resentment, and I don't blame Spielberg for that. Anyway, my point was I give Spielberg a lot of credit for not undercutting Hooper's kind of dark vision of the suburbs, undercutting the kind of darkness at the heart of the family, the sort of not sexless marriage, but beginning to kind of grow apart, in terms of intimacy. I love the total ineffectualness of Craig T. Nelson as a patriarch. Like everything he does, he's stymied, and by the end of the movie, he's just kind of standing there in the way. Like the most active thing he does is move the TV out of the hotel room at the end, right? The mom does all of the active stuff to bring, save the family and keep things going. So I love that about it. That's something that, while certainly Spielberg has some strong female leads in his films, he doesn't often disturb the patriarchy the way Hooper does. A lot of people have for various reasons claimed that Spielberg ghost directed this movie, but anyone who would say that or believe it clearly has not watched the movie and hasn't watched any other Hooper movies.
That's what I was going to say.
Well, I was going to say, I think very much it's a Hooper directed movie, but I think where the influence is more on ideas, some fears. I know a lot of when it came to some of the fear elements of the story, whether it be the clown or the trees, the scene where the trees kind of creep in, them are things that all came from Spielberg's kind of own fears that he kind of threw in there. And of course, one of the other main things was some of the casting. The casting was some of that was decided by, was helped decided by Spielberg, of course, because he's the money guy, has a lot of influence on that. And I think I read that Drew Barrymore was going to almost play this lead character of the girl, but switched it out at the last minute. Of course, she goes on to play an E.T. And, but that, if we'd had Drew Barrymore in this role, it might not have been quite the same vibe. and I think that choice is something that Spielberg made that was a great choice. And so
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Drew Barrymore now being like, oh my God, they're here.
Dad, yeah, it would have been a different vibe. And I think there's more of an innocence with the girl in the film, and just more of a genuineness that I think it wouldn't have been so actorly. I think they made the right choice, and I think that's the influence Spielberg can have. And he's of course works with kids a lot in his career, so he really can see what was maybe the proper choice, and I think he made the great choice. So
it's a great companion piece with Hooper's Invaders from Mars, because which is more of a movie from a kid's point of view, whereas this one you is more of a third person, I guess. And really an example, I guess, of how Hooper's films look when they're more personal, as opposed to, operating under the constraints of a large budget. A large budget opens up a lot of possibilities, but it comes with its own constraints. And it showed, I think in comparison, it shows Hooper's range, certainly capable of working with these bigger budgets and with the kind of constraints that come with them. I don't know, like, Ryan's right. This isn't really a debate. For real, I shouldn't say real, but for knowledgeable fans of film, Poltergeist is a quintessential Tobe Hooper movie, and a really cool interaction of Hooper's kind of post-Vietnam malaise and darkness infecting the sunny materialistic success of the suburbs, right? Like it's such a pointed sequence early in the film when you look at all the shit that's in the kids' rooms, Star Wars branded stuff, and just how tied into their material consumership that they are, like everybody else on their block. The sequences of the neighbors fighting over the remote control signal they're not just funny, but they're also like they're the Reagan era dick swinging contests, right? Like who's got the better car, who's got the bigger TV, who's got the more powerful remote control signal, who's watching the more popular television show. I think that the difference between Poltergeist and a typical Steven Spielberg movie is just how deep into the darkness it goes.
I will say one of the things I've always shared is that this film to me feels like the eeriness of a Tobe Hooper script invaded an Amblin suburb, and I just love that feeling throughout. One thing I did want to throw out too is a couple names that haven't been said yet. JoBeth Williams and Craig T. Nelson, I think might be like one of the best couples in a film ever. One of the most authentic, one of the most, the fact that they show them smoking pot in bed together afterwards, the fact that they are so relaxed and there's no, even when going through the crisis, neither one really gets blamed appropriately. It's more of just, oh, this is happening and we need to solve it. And I really, really love that about this. This is one of those films that you can watch and know that everything about it is fake. However, I would feel like I could be in a universe where this is happening if I had that type of people around me.
And of course, we can't forget about Zelda Rubinstein, who shows up in this. Very much a cult figure that, at the time, of course, this was early on, but it's now looking back, you're like, God damn it, she had to be in this movie. Like, it was a great choice to have her in there to be kind of a guide through some of the supernatural stuff that's happening. Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's undeniable that this is a Tobe Hooper movie, but I do think that we're talking about the influence that Spielberg had, that I think that they offset each other really well, and made the correct choices working together to make this a really great horror film. They balanced it out really well, and it would have been interesting to see Tobe Hooper's full version if he didn't have Spielberg there, to see what would have been taken out, would have been, his choices. But
speaking of, we got a question. Sibner wants to know, do we think not having Spielberg produce might have helped in some way? If it was potentially secure it more as a Hooper-styled film, if he had not had as big of a budget, would it have come off as more of a grittier take?
I mean, maybe, but the special effects situation, I don't know.
I was going to say, I think that Spielberg's, knowledge of effects at the time were probably a big deal for Hooper to shoot some of that. I mean, I know Hooper had done some kind of, he did like an alligator movie, like he'd done some things with effects. Yeah.
One was a crocodile.
Crocodile, yeah,
Well, but also, I don't think it necessarily would have been set in the suburbs in quite the same way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a Spielberg thing. And I think, yeah, I mean, he's definitely got a big influence. He has an influence on this movie, but I do think Hooper is definitely, unfairly taken away from this, because it has some of them elements of most Spielberg movies. So,
yeah,
but.
And this movie too is much more in tune with Hooper's politics than Spielberg's kind of an apolitical filmmaker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Outside of
most recent films.
Well, but I mean, outside of some historically specific films like Schindler's List and Munich. But he doesn't really do films about like contemporary politics, right?
Yeah.
His moral.
Very milk toast.
Yeah, is very safe moralizing, right? Like, but I don't think that either Spielberg or Hooper could have predicted it, but it's kind of perfect that Craig T. Nelson ended up going full MAGA later in life, right? Because this character is set up to do that, right? He's the guy who smokes pot in his upwardly mobile suburban home while reading Ronald Reagan's biography, right? Like this is the shift. This is the shift from the idealism of the hippies and civil rights movement and free love into the full-on yuppie American psycho materialism of the 80s. And I think Hooper really had his finger on the pulse. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is about that economic decline at the heart of post-Vietnam America. And he took that sensibility into the 80s, into Poltergeist, and mashed it into Steven Spielberg's nostalgia and exposed what is underneath all nostalgia, right? Which is essentially our brain's way of kind of protecting us from bad memories.
Dude McMahon says, speaking of memories, I grew up in an old city neighborhood and thought that suburban dystopia with 1,000 identical homes was the scariest part of the movie, and completely agree there.
Yeah, everything's exactly the same. I mean, this is the kind of dystopia that brings us things like, I mean, this is where Jackass ultimately comes from, right? These wealthy suburbanites whose idea of a good time is to go out and try to hurt themselves, and we enjoy it. And I think Jackass is awesome. So this is not a criticism, but culturally, that's what it comes from, right? It comes from suburban softness and security, right? The reason it's funny is that it's these suburban kids getting hurt. Like some kids who grew up like in a coal town doing that shit, that wouldn't be funny at all, because they've grown up around that kind of hardship. But watching these soft ass little skateboarders fall out of shopping carts, that's suburbia right there.
Well, and to make it super timely and not to bring the mood down, but we're facing that right now in our culture, because some people are getting put on blast because they are posting memes about 4 billionaires and 1 millionaire getting imploded under the ocean. And it's literally the exact same sort of thing. It's people are feeling less humane about it because they're so detached from society. And yeah, it's just 5 billionaires, so who cares?
Yeah, it's really sad. Like I get why people would be like, why are we paying so much attention to these 5 people and not the millions of people who are starving to death all over the world?
Right.
I get that, but you can still be sad for those. At least 4 of the 5 people you can be sad for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can still have room to criticize the media and care about everybody else. But most of the people who are talking shit about those, who are like, oh, why do we pay attention to the billionaires and we don't pay attention to anybody else? Well, they're not paying attention to anybody. They're just getting on Twitter and being like, no, you're wrong. Go do something. Go do something. Go hashtag your Instagram.
Wow, what a catchphrase for the night. Okay, so now that we have discussed our final round, we're going to do our final vote in just a minute. First, we're going to go over some real quick thoughts over all the films that we did not debate tonight. So, Will, give me a couple sentences, literally a couple sentences on the Goonies.
Goonies never say die. Sloth love chunk. You're going to live with us now. Andy, you Goonie!
How about a couple thoughts on Gremlins 2, the new batch? That's you.
Will?
Me?
Yes, yeah. You're the only one that had it on your list. Gremlins 2.
I was thinking of more Goonies lines. Well, I think the consensus on Gremlins 2, the new batch, is that it's truly Joe Dante's best film, in that he went for Baroque. Everything is in there with no consideration of how a popular audience might receive it. It is the ultimate Looney Tunes film, even more ultimate than the Looney Tunes film that he made. Gremlins 2, the new batch, is the unfettered id of the Gremlins taken to its ultimate extreme. It is chaos as cinema, and thus brilliant.
All right. Last one from you, Will. Even though we had to disqualify it, why are people sleeping on 3 O'Clock High?
Oh, dude. 2 words. Richard Tyson. His performance as the new kid in school who turns out to be an awful bully is so special, so nuanced that most people don't realize it, because they see him and they think bad guy all the way. But in fact, and he portrays this solely with his eyes, Tyson's character comes into school as the new guy and is absolutely scared, right? He's coming into this huge new school. He knows no one. He knows that he's going to be immediately sought out because of his size and physique, and harassed as a result. And when in fact he is approached by the nerdy guy, I forget the actor's name, but he's in a bunch of John Sayles movies, the nerdy newspaper writer guy, in a bathroom, no less, he reacts defensively with violence, because that's the only thing he's ever known. He's grown up in a sort of patriarchal society that has twisted his conception of masculinity.
This is a lot more than a couple sentences.
This is still one sentence. I'm using semicolons. I'll period. Next and final sentence. 3 O'Clock High is one of the most nuanced portrayals of teenage cishet masculinity to come out of the decade.
Put that on the Blu-ray.
Yes.
It is so damn good, and it's out from Shout Select, still available. Go get it. That movie is sorely underwatched.
Love it.
Steven, you're going to close this out. I'm going to toss you out a few titles. Give me a couple thoughts. Back to the Future 3. That's an odd choice out of the 3 for a lot of people.
I figured it, you know, and the thing is, I love the whole franchise. I love the first, probably if I had to pick what is probably my absolute favorite, I'd pick the first one, and I love the second one. But there's something about the third one for me when I'm thinking about ones that I kind of go back to a lot. I think I just really love the added sense of adventure that film has because of the Western backdrop.
Yeah.
You know, it takes that. You know, of course, these movies kind of repeat themselves. You know, a lot of the same in jokes, a lot of the same things, and then they take that and they put it in a different setting. And I really loved how it adapted some of that elements to the Western setting. And then, of course, Doc gets to have his own romance in this movie. And I thought it was nice to see him get a little bit more of what would be typically the leading man role in this movie, you know, little romance thing going on. So and you know, it's just, I love Westerns. I love the setting. And I think it just blended really nicely together. When we're talking about sci-fi Westerns, we're not talking about, you know, we just had that Cowboys and Aliens release come out. People kind of laughed that we were getting a 4K of that. But this is actually a really great sci-fi Western, I think. And, you know, you get a lot of great jokes. He uses Clint Eastwood as his name, you know, things like that. I think, though it might not be the best movie in the franchise, I think it's kind of, for me, the most fun. And I go back to it a lot. So that's that one.
How about an American Tail?
Oh, well, once again, this is another Don Bluth, you know, joint kind of thing. And it's one of them films where it's an animated film that very much, I mean, it plays up more to adults than anything. I think kids can really enjoy it on its surface level elements, but, you know, it's a film that's got deeper rooted thematics there. We're talking about like immigration of Jews, for, you know, things like that. It's got a deep story there. And I think it's one of them things that it's one of the top, I think, animated films of its time as just a good movie in general.
I would agree. And then finally on your list, how about Deep Impact?
Well, you know, Deep Impact's always in the shadow of Armageddon. And, you know, Armageddon's great. I love Armageddon. I have fun with it. But Deep Impact is a little bit underrated, I think. It's got a great cast as well. It's got Robert Duvall, Elijah Wood. Of course, Morgan Freeman is the president. Jon Favreau, James Cromwell's in there. And one thing about the film, and this might seem like, you know, depressing, but it really feels more like if it really happened, because things don't really work out in the movie. Like they don't break the asteroid and save the day and then come home and Earth's okay. Well, the shit hits the fan, and it's about them having to deal with the shit hitting the fan. And I think that's what makes that movie actually a little bit underrated. I still like Armageddon a lot, but Deep Impact, I think, is worth taking a rewatch. So,
yeah, I think it says something that Deep Impact was directed by a woman and has a black president, as opposed to Armageddon, which is a bunch of like aggro white dudes.
Yeah,
you know, once more,
oil rig guys. Instead of getting astronauts to learn oil rigging, drilling, they get oil riggers to become astronauts. Okay.
All right. Final vote for the evening. Will versus Steven. We've had some incredible debates tonight. Whoever wins this is going to be coming back for episode number 4 as the champion. Please vote in the comments now. Will or Steven? Who had the better night overall? Who had the better defense? Who was the better debater? Please leave a comment. Will, I'm curious, just to give you a couple moments of time. Small Soldiers. Why is it great?
Oh. How can we say it in just a few moments? You know, talk about a great combination of practical and digital effects. Dante shows yet again his mastery. The relationship, you know, between our two young leads. This is another really good tween movie, right? Like the 10 to 13, 14 age of kind of kids who are still children, but are kind of coming into all these new and confusing things. And there's not enough films like that, especially at that time. And then in true Dante fashion, the unbelievably dense, layered deployment of references to war movies and quotes from war movies that in many ways define the culture that these two kids come out of, because at this point war was not something so much that adults felt as they did see on TV and in the movies, right? Like, when was Small Soldiers, like 98?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so this was the first like televised war, right? The Gulf War, the first Iraq War. The Small Soldiers, the whole conceit of these constant references to war movies reminds us of the like really disgusting mythologization we do of war, right? And I say this as a person who loves and enjoys war movies, and I don't think that it's a problem to do so, but to recognize that ain't what it's about, you know, like war. Oh, good God, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. And so for these kids to be kind of reckoning with that war, the media war culture, is really interesting. I think if you could have put that into the underrated category, I would have gone hard for Small Soldiers as one of the most underrated films of the night. If
he was credited, it would have been up there on one of those.
Yeah, I agree. Small Soldiers is awesome. On top of that, I had a big crush on Kirsten Dunst at the time. So but yeah, I love that movie. It is one of the movies that I love where it is more adult, but for kids. Like I really enjoy it. So,
did you know she's married to Jesse Plemons?
Yep.
I just
craziest shit I've ever seen. Yeah. See that?
Well, hey, love is love, and good for them.
Of course.
My wife and I are watching both of the adaptations of John Bloom, Joe Bob Briggs' true crime book, Evidence of Love. So we're watching Candy, which is on Hulu, and Love and Death, which is on Max. And Jesse Plemons is in the Love and Death one. And God, he's so unappealing in it. So when I told my wife that he was married to Kirsten Dunst, she was like, ew. I was like, no, he just looks like that for the role. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
All right, so we got, I believe, 2 or 3 different ties, but other than that, most of the other votes went to Will. Steven, you got a couple. Will, you seem to be emerging again victorious.
I'm frankly shocked, as I have been. Well, last time I was surprised too.
Everybody, this has been amazing. Steven and Will are some of my favorite people. Please go check out their stuff. Steven's on the Chasing Labels podcast, and Will's on my channel on the first Thursday of every month. No, I'm just kidding. Go buy Will's books. He is an incredibly talented person, and I have nothing but love for both of these people.
Hey, let me interject something real quick. There's no winners and losers here. Stephen Billings is awesome. He's a fellow North Carolinian, and I mean, I did win, but there's really no winners or losers.
I mean, we're having fun here.
We're just having a good time.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
You're good. I love that Sarda says, thanks for coming, Steven. Like, well, you were here, but good riddance.
It's fine. I'm just another in the line of casualties against Dr. Will Dodson.
I got to get somebody formidable next time. Maybe we can get like a Brad Henderson or something.
Oh, shit.
Somebody that will talk for you're going to have a 5-hour show. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hope to see you in 48 hours. It hasn't been said anywhere else yet. So this Thursday, Celeste de la Cabra is back on the channel to ring out Pride Month in style. We're going to be talking about queer films, and it's going to be a fun night. There's a lot of announcements this week, a lot of stuff to talk about. Plus, going into the Severance sale, we'll be going live Thursday night. So hope to see you there, and I hope everybody gets some rest. Other than that, we'll see you Thursday next week. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.